Welcome back to the Vince Coglianese Show. Certainly a lot going on in the United States, and that means also a lot going on in Congress. Right now, lawmakers are trying to figure out which countries are going to receive more American taxpayer money and to what extent, and whether or not all of that should be lumped together. That's Joe Biden's preference. That's also Mitch McConnell's preference. But it's not the preference of House Republicans. For more on this, I want to bring in Congressman Andy Biggs. He is a congressman from Arizona. He's also a member of the House Judiciary and Oversight committees. Congressman, great to have you back with us, sir.
Thank you, Vince. It's great to be with you, as always.
Thank you. And we saw Joe Biden give that big Oval Office address now, I think about 2 weeks ago. And when he did that, he said he was calling for another $100 billion in foreign aid. What I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, but kind of shocked to see, is that he was exploiting Israel's suffering to give the lion's share of this money to Ukraine. And additionally, his plan was to spend some $14 billion bringing more illegal immigrants into our country. What do you think of this idea of lumping all this money together? And what should the path forward look like, if any?
It's an incredibly bad idea to lump it all together. In fact, I don't think we should have a foreign aid bill ever that is lumping every country together, because not all countries are on even footing. We probably should get rid of most foreign aid. But certainly, you cannot equate our relationship with Israel, which is extremely longstanding, many agreements in place economically, some joint security agreements, et cetera, with what's going on in Ukraine. You also can't, you've got two very different nations. Israel is proven to be quite reliable in its accounting of what we've done, whereas Ukraine, as you know, they've got money going all over the place. We've got material that's ended up in rebellions in Central Africa, for instance. They were a kleptocracy before. They continue to be corrupt now. And so you've got very disparate countries, very disparate contexts. And Vince, the biggest context of all is when we're giving money to anybody, including our own citizens, we are borrowing that money. And so we're having to borrow the $14 billion that they want in Israel. You should definitely not couple it with $61 billion going to Ukraine when we're funding you. That would help fund their pension plan, the government system, plus their military, plus their farmers. And at the same time, you should not give Biden administration one more dime to facilitate the invasion on our southern border.
So on the Ukraine part for a moment, the average American has no idea how their money's being spent, this borrowed money that you pointed to. People who are in the media who look closely at this, myself included, have no idea how this money is being spent. And perhaps most troublingly, members of Congress, I keep seeing members of Congress say they have no idea how this money is being spent or accounted for or watched over. And so how is it that we could cut any more money to Ukraine until we get our arms around that, which is like, how has all the other stuff been spent?
That's exactly right. So the administration will come in and offer a briefing, and it's the same thing you can read. It's the same thing you read in publicly, where it's like, well, we got accountability, we've got people watching over it. It's all really great, and then you get a report like we saw over the weekend, where you actually have people stealing money because there's so much money coming in so quickly. They're just stealing it and going away.
That's the Time magazine report, so people know that a top aide to Vladimir Zelensky told Time magazine, quote, people are stealing like there's no tomorrow. That meaning they're just raiding all of this money and these resources that we are giving to Ukraine.
Yeah, and you know what, Vince, people like you and I have said that would happen as soon as we started giving money to Ukraine. Why? Because Ukraine was a kleptocracy before. They were considered one of the most corrupt nations in the world, money laundering hub, the hub of the, in part to the Biden family, payola, if you will. But the point is, we're giving them money but we have no idea where it's going. We've given them material that has ended up all over the world. In some cases, my guess it's going to be used against us or our allies. So it becomes asinine to do that. But this administration wants to fully fund them. By the way, $61 billion ostensibly would fund them for the full year, supposedly. But my guess is Mr. Zelensky would be back here very quickly to ask for more.
Let's talk about Israel now. You've got House Republicans led by Speaker Mike Johnson have proposed this bill that would fund Israel to the tune of $14.3 billion in additional aid. That's above and beyond everything else we've given to Israel through the years to prepare it for exactly this moment when they're being assaulted and attacked by terrorists. $14.3 billion. It would be offset, Speaker Johnson says, by cuts to IRS funding that had been enacted under the so-called Inflation Reduction Act. In other words, they had hired tens of thousands of new IRS agents designed to go after middle-class Americans, despite the president's claim that it would only be rich people that were subjected to new audits. Do you like this plan, Congressman? And of course, we're looking at the White House saying that they reject it entirely.
Yeah, if you're going to give money to Israel, and by the way, I support Israel, it shouldn't be just about money either. I mean, we should have some pretty strong accountability measures in Israel too. I mean, because it's a lot of money.
Yes.
Of course. But if you're going to do it, you should not just be throwing money to borrow it. I mean, even let's face it, even the money that was given to the IRS, which is $60 billion net last year, and they haven't spent it all. Thank goodness they haven't spent it all. Take that back. We were supposed to take that back. We actually passed legislation to do it. The Senate wouldn't take it up. This is actually an appropriate way to what we call offset. We're going to offset the spending for Israel by removing from IRS and its weaponized state. But Vince, I tell you, we should be doing some additional policies too. Why in the world are we going to give the Palestinians more money? Biden gave him $235 million 2 years ago. He wants to give him another $100 million. Believe me, it's fungible. That money gets in the hands of Hamas, and so you end up funding both sides of this, and that's another crazy thing.
Yeah.
You got us giving money to the Lebanese armed forces, which ends up in the hands of Hezbollah, and so you've got those things. What you really need to do is take the handcuffs off Israel, other than reporting the money. Let us know what's happening with it, and making sure that it's appropriately going. And by the way, most of that money will end up back in U.S. defense contractors' hands because they'll buy material and weaponry from us.
Yeah, that's the normal arrangement. We give so much money to Israel, but a lot of that money actually goes back to American defense contractors because they're required to buy American defense products.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the point is, you should never be funding both sides of a war. But we're kind of doing that with Ukraine and Russia. We're doing that. We're doing it here, and
we do it all the time. We did it in Afghanistan too. We were giving money to Pakistan, and that was flowing through their intelligence services into terrorism in Afghanistan that was killing our troops. We were funding both sides of all of these conflicts. I mean, at some point we got to grow sick of this, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're preparing. I've been told that they won't allow me to even offer my amendments, but I'm preparing amendments on all of these things that you and I are talking about to take the handcuffs off Israel and to stop funding both sides. And you know, there's other things there too. How about this? How about let's put aside the notion of a two-state solution. I mean, Israel basically gave Gaza over to Hamas, thinking that might resolve that issue in some ways, and they gave Hamas, they gave the Gaza quite a bit of autonomy, and the bottom line is, it didn't work. Every one of these every one of these nations, every one of these non-state actors as well, they want to wipe Israel off the planet. And so stop with the passe, quaint notion of a two-state solution. That ain't going to work. That's probably not going to work, and you got to admit it.
Yeah. How often? And that's been offered like so many times. What is it, like half a dozen official times or something? It's like, and every single time, the Arab side of this equation says no. The Palestinians say absolutely not, never in a million years. And from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. It's about the eradication of Israel, and it always has been, and always will be, apparently.
Yeah, exactly right. Which gets back to double funding. Are some of our dollars going to fund the anti-Semitic faction of the Ukrainian army, what they call the Azov Brigade? And the answer is probably yes. I mean, it's not probably yes. I am undoubtedly it's yes. So we end up funding bad actors all over the world, and I guess we have for decades and decades, and that's a problem because it actually increases our vulnerability. It doesn't help us become more safe and secure. I know that there will be foreign policy experts that can contest me on that, but I disagree with their position on that.
Congressman, let me shift gears with you now to some news today out of the House Oversight Committee. The chairman of your committee, James Comer, released bank records this morning at around 10 a.m. that showed that President Joe Biden previously took a $40,000 check from his family members right after they received money from Chinese business associates. In a video this morning that Comer posted on X, formerly Twitter, the bank records were outlined, which showed how various Biden family members would take the money from the Chinese business associates and wire it to Joe Biden shortly thereafter, quoting here from the Daily Caller. Interestingly, I'm looking at the numbers here, Congressman Biggs, and it looks like Joe Biden receives $40,000. That is directly after the Biden family and Hunter Biden received $400,000 total. The math here seems pretty simple. $40,000 is 10% of $400,000. That flowed right to Joe Biden right after the Bidens got a big payday from China. What are we to make of this? And is this the smoking gun that'll finally get everyone to admit that Joe Biden's been lying about this whole thing?
Well, the left is never going to admit that Joe Biden did anything wrong. But let's analyze that just for a second. So Owasco, which is one of dozens of shell corporations by Hunter Biden and a couple of his partners, they received in August the $400K you're talking about from another entity. So it got washed through. They got $400,000, but it started wandering through this from Hudson West 3 into Owasco, $400K, and then a few weeks later you get the $40K going to Joe Biden from Sarah Biden. And so, I mean, this is pretty consistent to everything we've seen. We've received an additional, I think it's 3,000 or 4,000 bank records that come through, and as we go through and we scrub this stuff, you find these amounts of money going to Joe Biden. And don't forget, the reason that that's so important is because we've had multiple witnesses testify that Biden was to receive 10% or 10% for the big guy. So as they're selling access or they're selling influence around the world, the Biden family, the corrupt Biden family, Joe Biden was getting a skim. He was getting 10%. And but the left always says, but these were loan repayments. Well, okay, so if they're loan repayments, the question would be, when was the principal lent by Joe Biden?
Yes.
There is no record whatsoever that he ever lent anybody any money because he didn't have money. Yeah.
Congressman, this word loan has appeared, I want to say, 1 million times now in the Biden family arrangements. For instance, an example that sticks out to me is right now, all of Hunter Biden's bills, including his tax bill, the overdue tax bills, have been paid by a Hollywood attorney by the name of Kevin Morris, and the money is being given to Hunter in the form of, quote, loans. It's being loaned to Hunter. And every time I see loan, I can't help but think this is all a way to evade taxation. They're trying to pass around money without paying taxes, because they say, well, if it's a loan, then I didn't actually accrue any income. It's just a loan. It's just a loan. I don't have to pay income tax on that. And it strikes me that there's a massive tax scandal inside of all of this too.
Well, you're exactly right. So you got the actual substantive corruption going on over here, and then you've got to hide the money from the IRS. And so this is what the IRS whistleblowers were telling us was going on. They were not allowed to investigate this by IRS superiors that were preventing that from happening. So, yeah, I mean, why else do it's 150,000 here, it's 200,000 here, it's 40,000 there, all going to Joe Biden with. And by the way, there's no loan documentation. There's nothing that says there's a promissory note dated here, and there's no indicia that Joe Biden ever deposited or provided or wire transferred any money in from his own personal accounts to any of these individuals or corporations. So what are they doing? It is an IRS a tax evasion scheme as much as a corruption scheme on the selling of access. So they should be coming and going, but we're fighting the weaponized now Biden administration, and we're fighting it because they're going to try to protect these guys. The media and the left stream media is going to protect them. The corporate left media is going to protect them every chance they get, Vince.
Yep. No question. Well, let's see what they do today with this story. $40,000 identified going directly to Joe Biden after the Biden family made a whole bunch of money from China. Thank you, Congressman Andy Biggs, as always, for your time. Look forward to chatting with you again soon, sir. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Vince.